to mid-300s, so about 1700 years ago. So the Byzantine source is the one that includes that little ending that says the dynasty, power, and glory forever. And the Byzantine source is the one that the King James was translated from. Because in 1611, and rather leading up to 1611, in 1500s, you had these scholars who began to interpret the Bible, and they were trying to translate it into English and into other languages other than Latin. They began looking at the manuscripts that they had available. And the Greek and Latin manuscripts they had available to them were the ones that came from the Byzantine sources, which were around 400 or later. Alright? Now there was also this other document called the Didache. And for many centuries, Christians didn't even know that this document existed. They had heard about it, but they thought, well, this must be a myth, because we constantly hear about this document called the Didache. But nobody has ever seen it. So at this point, many Christians are believing this must be just some sort of myth. Like it's like some sort of made-up Christian document. And supposedly, the Didache was written within about 100 years after Jesus rose from the dead. So this is one of the earliest Christian writings. And what the Didache was, is it was a form of Christian discipleship. So it's believed that the Didache was the earliest form of Christian discipleship, which gave instructions on how the early Christians were to live, how they were to practice their piety, and things such as that. Well, randomly, in 1873, there was a Greek bishop who was in the Holy Sepulchre in Constantinople, and he was doing some research, and he was digging, and he opened up the document, and he found the Didache just randomly placed in his document. And then they began to realize, this is the document that we've heard about for 1,500 years, that we didn't even know, or we weren't even sure if it actually existed. And it was just randomly inside of another document that had been placed inside of the tomb, and this Greek bishop found it. And so as they began to read the Didache, and they began to read this early form of Christian discipleship that scholars and Christians had heard about for centuries, there was instructions on the Lord's Prayer. And it was told that whenever you recite the Lord's Prayer, that you should recite it daily, and that when you recite it, you should include the ending that we know today, which is the dynasty, power, and glory forever. And so within 100 years of Jesus' resurrection, there was this document that added that to it. But the reason why other modern translations don't is because the earliest Greek manuscripts that have been available to us don't have it. And so more than likely what happened is, whenever the Byzantine text was being put together, they looked at the Didache, which had this doxology, because that's what it is. It is a form of praise and worship to close out the prayer. And so as they were putting their text together, it was added to the text as a way of praising God as we close out the prayer, which some scholars believe is the way of mimicking the Psalms. Because many of the Psalms, if you look at the pattern, it opens up with praise. It gets into all the petitions and everything else that the psalmist is crying out to God about, and then it ends with praise. And so the Lord's Prayer in this text, we follow the same pattern that it opens with praise. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And then it closes again with praise for thy kingdom, power, and glory forever. And that was just added to that text. And so you have this long historical explanation to explain why the King James includes the doxology in the Lord's Prayer and the other modern English translations don't. Now, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't seem to me so it doesn't really matter. But hopefully, if you have that question, you're like, well, why does our English Bible not have this? Because we've always grown up praying it. Or why do some English Bibles have it and some don't? It's not just something that happens, there is actual reason. But as I was saying, I'm going to look at other texts and focus on prayer. Because as I was saying, if we follow the Lord's Prayer, and we follow that God has told us to pray about, it kind of forces us to leave out some of the things that we might pray. Because we're too busy focusing on God and His kingdom and His will. We're focusing on what it is that God provides for us. But there's still other things we need to pray. Anybody who's ever had any sort of trouble or difficulty in your life, you know, you're saying, I want to pray. I've been used as a hurt. I've got this going on, and I need to pray about it. Well, in the very same sermon, just a chapter later, Jesus says, ask and it will be given, seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, everyone who seeks finds, and the one who knocks, it will be opened. Alright, so Jesus, in the very same sermon that He gives towards prayer, He's now giving instructions on how we are to make petitions before God. He's saying, ask, seek, knock, everything that you have, bring it before God. Then we also have the parable of the persistent widow. This comes from Luke chapter 18, which follows this. He told them a parable to the effect that they ought to always pray and not lose heart. He said, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor respected man, and there was a widow in that city who kept coming to him and saying, give me justice against my adversary. For a while he refused, but afterward he said to himself, though I neither fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow is bothering me, I will give her justice, so that she will not beat me down by her continual coming. And the Lord said, here was an unrighteous judge. And will not God give justice to his elect who cry to him day and night? Will he delay upon over? I tell you, he will give justice to his people. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith? Alright, so Jesus gives this parable on prayer from Luke's Gospel. We are to pray for justice. We are to pray for what's right. And in many ways we can say, well, this is a part of praying on the kingdom of God. If we read the Psalms, Psalm 97, we see that the foundation of God's throne is justice and righteousness. Praying for justice is part of God's kingdom. So we can say, okay, praying about justice, we can include that in the Lord's Prayer when we're commanded to pray for people. And we certainly need to be reminded that we should pray for justice. For many of you who have come from the United Methodist Church, and you may have heard for past few decades now what justice is, what justice looks like, what justice might be. It's almost gotten to the point where you're sick of hearing about justice, because every time the word justice is brought up, it doesn't sound like justice. I remember being at Duke and being told that it was a justice to allow abortion because it was a type of human rights. I was being told you should allow homosexuality because it's a type of justice to allow people to do whatever they want. And the idea of justice has become so misconstrued and messed up that sometimes we're just tired of hearing about it because it's not even justice. It's not even what God has told us is right. Those aren't great. It is part of that. It is something that we're to be concerned with. There are many times Jesus addresses the Pharisees and said you should be concerned with the poor, taking care of the widow, being merciful. So justice is very much something that we should pray. It's very much a thing that the church should be concerned with, which is to seek the justice of God, slow down. But we don't need to be so reactionary where every time we hear the word justice that we immediately reject it because we've got this polluted idea, because there are so many Christians out there, it seems like, who have messed up the definition of what God's justice is. They have their own penalty coming. They have their own destruction coming to them because they have taken the things of God and they have made them holy. They have taken what God has commanded us to pray about, and they have attributed the works of Satan to the works of God by saying that there are some things that are just. They have their own condemnation of us. We as people who are commanded to pray and pray for justice. So there is still instructions on prayer. So Jesus has given other instructions. He says, ask, seek, knock. There's this other parable on how to pray for justice. And there is a continual coming to God. And some people will say, well, isn't this a contradiction? Because in the Lord's Prayer, whenever He introduces the prayer, He says, don't recite these phrases. Don't just keep throwing up phrases and saying the same thing over and over and over again. And here in Luke 18, He says, pray. Just pray. And worship. Our prayer should be sincere. Our prayer should be something that we do not lose heart in. And we continue to pray, not for the sake of being showy, not for the sake of continuing to be smart and eloquent and trying to impress others. We should continue to pray for the right and just. Alright, so elsewhere in the New Testament, Paul tells us to pray without ceasing. In Philippians 4, he says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Alright, so when we put all these together, and we understand that as Christians we're to be a praying people, what is Jesus, what is Paul, what are the New Testament writers telling us about prayer? Well, it's telling us every single thing we should be in prayer. So we have that beautiful psalm that tells us to delight ourselves in the Lord and He shall give us the desires of our heart. And if I was to sum up the Lord's Prayer, I would say it's that one statement that sums up the Lord's Prayer. Delight yourself in the Lord and He will give you the desires of our heart. Because whenever we pray the Lord's Prayer, alright, so let's take for example, here's some your husband, father, your children, your relatives, your family, you've got nothing. You can't pay the bills, kids are hungry. And you go to God in prayer. And that single mother, the only thing she may really be concerned with, she just wants to be able to pay her bills and feed her kids. She wants to be able to set a good example for them to know that just because their father is left doesn't mean that it doesn't end the world. The way that the Lord's Prayer works, the way that this pattern of prayer works is that when we come to God in prayer, regardless of whatever trouble, regardless of whatever issues that we have in life, we first focus on God. We first focus on His love. Remember, the very second word is Father, our Father. The only way that we can even address God's Father is if we are there to make the purpose and eternal love that has been shown to us. We can never understand how deep and wide and wonderful it is. So when we come praying, we pray Father, because we know that we are His children and we love Him. So the prayer centers us on who God is. Love. We begin to pray for His holiness. We pray for His being holy. We begin to pray for His kingdom and for His will to be done. And we spend the first half of the prayer praying about who God is, worshiping Him in prayer, that He is our Father, that He is holy, that He is the God who is in heaven. And as we begin to focus on who God is, there is peace, there's grace, there's strength. So by the time you begin to pray this prayer and you make it through all the petitions, and then you get to the thing that is achieved prayer. Now you pray about this, as single mother people pray about paying their bills, and taking care of their kids, and so on. That God has designed prayer for us in such a way that by the time we get through all of that, then we get to focus on ourselves. There is a peace and there is a grace and there is a strength that is filled us, so that we have faith and confidence in God. He will provide us. And that's the way that the Lord is teaching us to pray. This is not saying, okay, your Father up in heaven is just like some genie who's just start blurting out a whole bunch of stuff and hope that you get a response. The way that He designed us to pray is that when we pray and we get through all these petitions, we begin to pray about everything that's going on. And we have grace. We find peace and strength. That way we have confidence in God says, look, God, I know that you're faithful. I know that you're strong and you will give me strength. I know that you are the one who has the grace and you will be gracious. I know that you are the merciful God and you will give me mercy. And that there is a peace and there is a comfort that begins to overtake us as we pray this morning. And so the Lord's instructions for us to pray wasn't just some simple thing that He just randomly did. If you remember when I first introduced the series, I said that everything that Jesus did, He was the giving of Himself for us, to show His love to us, to show how deep the Father's love is, to show how much He loves and cares for us. And so as He instructs us to pray, not just here, but in other parts of the New Testament, He continues to show His heart to us. He continues to show that He has enough love, enough power, enough grace, enough strength to take care of us. And when we remember that God is our Father, that it's not just a little thing to address His call. What Father who has a perfect, infinite, and eternal love and care for His children doesn't want to hear from us? No, God, He wants to hear from us. He wants to hear about all of our troubles. He wants to hear about all of our pains and all of our anguishes, all the anxiety, all the hurts that we have in our life. He desires to hear from us. Because it shows that we trust Him enough and we love Him enough to give it to Him. And so our Father in heaven delights to hear us pray. Our Father in heaven loves to hear us lift up every petition and every trouble and every hurt that we have. And our Father in heaven is the only one who can provide what we need. And so I don't know how it is that you pray, or how it is that you have been praying. You may have grown weary of prayer. You may have been frustrated in prayer because it just seems like the thing that you're praying about God isn't answered. Well, He does answer prayer. No, He still answers. Not yet. He still answers. But I encourage you to follow this pattern of prayer that Jesus laid out for us. To follow the pattern of the Lord's Prayer by beginning worshiping God in prayer, addressing Him as Father who loves us and cares for us. And then having our focus shifted to the things of God, focusing on who God is, and then we begin to pray God. So just follow that pattern of prayer and see how our life changes. See the grace and peace and strength that is found in us. And as we remember that this instruction to pray, it is Jesus giving Himself to us. And so that we will be joined to Him in prayer, so that we will find strength and we find, remember, it's not just prayer we find. Here in a moment we're about to celebrate Holy Communion, like the Lord's will for us to know. We're reminded that Jesus didn't just give Himself to us through words that He spoke, or through teachings, or through instructions. But He gave Himself to us, He gave Himself for us, and came out to sacrifice, which continues to show His love for us. The very same God who came out of heaven and walked this earth and died for you is the same God who sits in heaven right now and prays for you. He welcomes us and encourages us to continue to pray. So here as we come to receive Holy Communion, we are reminded that we are still receiving Christ. That He is still giving Himself to us and for us. And He still desires for us to pray. Our Father in heaven would like to hear our prayers. Amen.